A2 milk. This is one of the things we're researching at the moment. Two guiding principles in all the research we do. If it doesn't make sense, it's probably important, which we learned some years ago when Persico said it, and he was absolutely right. So many things haven't made sense, but now they do. And the other one was from the Bible, where Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. And you remember them. You remember it until later on it comes back and you think, yes, I remember that, that makes sense now. And we get this happening all the time. Because I'm not blaming us for not understanding. We didn't have the knowledge, we didn't have the understanding to be able to make sense of it. It happens. Here's one for you. Are children with autism the same all over the world? If we're talking about environmental factors being involved, and I haven't said much about that, if we're talking pesticides and infections, I think they won't be. And it won't be the same now. Autism won't be the same now as it was 30 years ago. We know the borders have been extended, the diagnostic criteria changed, yes, that is true. And we know that a lot of parents read on the internet something's wrong, and so they start twiddling about with the diet and things. And so when the psychologist sees them, they're not the same as they were before. Yes, we know all that, but is there anything else? A couple of years ago, I went to Bahrain. And I don't see children, I work in a laboratory, but by some mistake, I'd agreed to see these children. I think it's because they offered me money. But anyway, I saw these children, and these children were different to what I'd seen before. The first two or three, you think, oh, it's just a bit different. And according to the mothers, they were absolutely fine until they were 2 years of age. There was nothing wrong until they were 2 years, 24 months. They changed dramatically. And they were different. And I hadn't seen this pattern before. We'd seen children who'd been fine until they had the MMR vaccine, and then down they went, and they changed. But these were two, and they picked up a lot of skills by this time. And of the 22 children we saw, in fact, we'd seen half of them before we'd even looked at this, but they showed no sign until then, mainly 24 months. People said they were fine till 24 months. And I said, well, what happens at 24 months? And they said, you stop breastfeeding. And I said, why do you stop breastfeeding? They said, because it says in the Quran, you stop breastfeeding when they're 2. And so that's what they've done. So these children had not had cow milk until they were, or they had, if they'd had cow milk, they also had human milk. That was removed, and down they went. So these children were not the same as what I'd seen. These children were more sociable. They'd learnt about friendliness, they'd come and sit on your lap, they were hyperactive, they fitted all the criteria, but they were different. And I put it down to the fact they hadn't had cow milk until they developed certain skills before it came on. Which is what I'm going to come and talk about now, the research we're doing now. The research we're doing now. Mammalian milk is very similar, whatever the species that we're talking about. Chimps, rats, wombats, camels, Americans, all sorts of things. It's pretty much the same, except for one. One is different. That one. The Western European cow, the milk is different from the other sorts. And nowadays, most of the milk which comes into Saudi Arabia or to the Philippines or wherever you were, is from Australia, and it's from these cows. Not the Carabao cows, cattle that used to get milk from, or goats that you got it traditionally from, but from these. And these cause problems. Not just autism, but other things as well. Now, I mentioned these opioid peptides right now for a reason. And the opioid peptides from these old breeds of cows have this sequence. Tyrosine proline, you see it there. And on this end, a thing called proline there, which makes it difficult to break down. But these cows here, these black and white cows, differ only in that amino acid is different there. It's different there, and that means that we can break that down and produce this very potent compound there. From the old breeds and all other mammals, we can't do it. Because proline's there, we don't produce that stuff. But from these black and white cows, we've now taken over the world, essentially, that happens. And we've got similar compounds in gluten as well, the same sort of sequence of amino acids, difficult to break down with morphine-like effects. So now we're not using these safe cows, we're using these. But they have been breeding cows to produce only this sort of milk. But all these cows can produce both sorts, but it's just selective breeding. It's not genetic modification. Selective breeding, they're producing only this sort of milk. It probably happened a mutation about 8,000 years ago. But these cows could well have been more docile and easier to look after, and they produced milk which made people feel good. So perhaps that's why these things took over, as opposed to these older breeds. We find a lot of the native breeds of cattle in France, the Normand cattle, the Alpine blue cow, various other old-fashioned breeds. These are Guernseys from the island of Guernsey, which didn't mix in with the rest of the cattle. So we've got these isolated communities producing safe milk. So what they've shown is that it does have a severe difference. This is experimental, but it does, the papers are there, they're all published, showing all sorts of things. Basically, the bad news is that if you've got these opioid peptides, they are switching genes off. They're stopping genes from working, or maybe switching on ones which should be left off under normal circumstances. So genes are not working in the way they should. It's not just the opioid effect I was talking about earlier in the brain. It's having long-term effects on developing.